Does your child skip or mispronounce words when they're reading out loud? Do you try to help them and then they get frustrated with you? Well, it's never fun to have a frustrated child, and when I'm working with children on their oral reading, I do pick and choose which words I correct or ask them to correct. Today, I'm going to share those guidelines with you, the guidelines I use when I'm trying to decide if I should correct a child or if we should just keep on reading. I'm Allison DeFrees, and you're watching Reading with Allison. If you get some good ideas out of this video, would you please like it and subscribe to my channel? Believe it or not, those actions really help other parents find this video also. Let's get started. I had this conversation with a parent whose child I work with. She wants to know how she can correct her child's reading when he reads out loud without leading to frustration. I'm going to share those guidelines with you today. These guidelines come from the coursework I did for my master's degree and from my experience working with students who have dyslexia. I know that some of you are going to want to message me and say, every single word needs to be correct. You can't just skip over them and move on. What if we're doing assessments like dibbles or we're counting correct words per minute? So I just want to get it out in the open early to say what I'm talking about here is reading to practice reading and reading for pleasure. This would not be a reading assessment. This is not dibbles. I'm not speaking about that. And also, I'm not talking about a presentation a student might do, such as reading a poem or participating in a play where they have to read a script. What I'm talking about is when you sit down with your child and you read a chapter book with them in the evening, or they are reading part of their book to you out loud and they're practicing their reading or they're reading for pleasure. It's important to encourage and support your child when they're doing those two actions, especially if reading for pleasure or reading to practice to be a better reader is not something they do for fun, not something they turn to regularly. These guidelines will help you correct on the smaller level, the word level, and help you correct on a larger level, which could be a sentence or a paragraph. Here are the guidelines that I recommend. The first suggestion is to correct when you think it's going to interfere with the student's comprehension. And when I say correct, I mean I do that thing where I have a really soft voice, a kind tone, and I simply give the corrected pronunciation to the student. Let me give you an example. One student and I were reading The One and Only Ivan by Katherine Applegate together, and he read, Ivan will step into the bed tomorrow. It's actually that Ivan was going to step into a box tomorrow, and this box was the shipping crate, and spoiler alert, it's going to the zoo. I mean, it's a big part of the story. So I needed to correct my student and make sure that he understood it wasn't a bed Ivan, this gorilla, was going to step into, but rather a box, a shipping container. So I, at that point, would have given my student in that kind tone, I would have said, box. Better yet, I would have said in an innocent voice, Ivan's getting into bed tomorrow? Or, where's Ivan going tomorrow? And let them think in their brain, oh yeah, that doesn't really make sense. What did it say? Oh, box. Okay. So I do interfere when the misread could impact comprehension. Speaking of comprehension, I, in this setting, value comprehension much higher than correct, accurate reading on every single word. And anyone would get frustrated if you continually correct them on the misreads or the miscues that they have. So I always limit the number of corrections I'd make in general, and I check for comprehension. The place I check for comprehension varies on the text. If we read a picture book, I might check a couple times throughout the book or maybe at the end. If we're reading a chapter book, I could check every other paragraph or at the end of a chapter. But I like to see that they have comprehended what happened in that chapter or that book or that paragraph. So I'll check for comprehension at the end. I'll say, wow, we just read a lot. What is happening to this character right now? Or how do you think this character is feeling? I mean, so-and-so just said they weren't good enough. You get the point. Just ask a little comprehension question. I always value comprehension over accuracy at the word level. I do not correct a student if they replace a word with a synonym, because it doesn't interfere with comprehension. So instead of saying asks, they read says. It's a synonym. I know one's for a statement and one's for a question, but it's fine. I don't correct it. What they have done is actually quite smart in their brain. They have read the dialogue and they know that someone's talking, and they have replaced a very similar talking word. It's totally fine. I leave those. I also do not correct a student if they have skipped a smaller word, skipped an adjective or an adverb. Now, if I notice that they have a pattern of skipping, then it's something to talk about. But again, here I'm just talking about reading for practice or reading for pleasure. Okay, let's move on. The next thing I make sure to correct is if it's a noun that's really important in the sentence and the student can't read it or has misread it. I will cue the student on strategies I know they have in their toolkit. For example, if my student had misread the word shoulders in the sentence, I pull my shoulders back and hold my head high, then the sentence doesn't really make sense. And I cue my student with tools I know they have, and I ask them, will you please divide that word that starts with the SH, shoulders? And they'll divide the word, and I can see if their tools are working for them or if they need more support from me. Here's another correction guideline that I learned in grad school that has served me really well. I wait until the end of a paragraph or a small chunk of writing to ask the student to go back and reread it. I use the strategy when there have been several jumbled pronunciations that I feel like are going to impact comprehension of that chapter. Instead of asking for the student to correct 5 words in that one paragraph, I simply ask the student to reread the paragraph again. And it's not about correcting these 5 words, it's about me asking to hear that information again from the student. So implied here is that as the listener, I don't really understand what's going on in the story. Can you tell it to me again? I missed it. I didn't get it. And honestly, that's what anyone's brain is doing. That's what the reader's brain is doing and the listener's brain is doing. And by asking in a calm, kind way, can you go back and reread that paragraph? Or will you please read that paragraph again? They are happy to do it because their brain wonders the same thing. What just happened in that paragraph? That's a really good one. So again, that strategy is not to correct every word as it comes up in a paragraph or a small paragraph, but to ask the student to please read it again because you didn't quite understand it. Please let me know if any of these guidelines or strategies help ease the frustration when you're reading with your child and boost your child's comprehension. Thank you for watching, and happy reading.